Welcome to the Red Pill Cartel Podcast with Davey Wavy, the epicenter for truthers, conspiracy, pop culture, and more.
All right. Happy to have James Price here, the creator of Plunderworld, the collectible conspiracy trading cards. How are you, James?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to this all week.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I've been looking forward to it too. I've told a few friends and they're like, I showed them plunderworld.com and they were like super excited. I'm like, I'm having this guy on my show tonight. And they're like, what?
Yeah, it's crazy because I got a few buyers up in Canada, and I mean, I've got people that say I've had some places go to Ontario, Edmonton, a couple other spots. I'd have to look at my shipping records, but then I'd share personal information. You don't want to see that.
No, that's okay.
And I apologize to your audience because my garbage audio setup has me sound like 8 octaves deeper than I normally am. So ladies, if you like my voice, it's all a lie. Okay.
The ladies gotta love you, man, because that stash.
Hey, what can I say? I'm going for like 70s cop.
That's a Selleck stash right there.
Yeah. My wife says it makes me look Russian. I'm like, okay, all right, thanks.
Yeah, a little bit. I could see that. Comrade.
Yeah. Yeah,
What
right.
what inspired you to start this trading card thing, man?
What inspired me? Well, a couple of things. I homeschool my kid. And the problem is that when your kid's not around other kids, then they're not really a part of anything that's like a social reason to gather.
Sure.
And one of the things that we got into was a series of books that I'm probably sure you're aware of by a man named Connor Boyack. And he wrote a series of books for children called the Tuttle Twins. Have you heard of those?
I have not, no.
They're fantastic. I mean, they're like Curious George style, simple books for kids like junior high and younger. And each book outlines a libertarian or basically like volunteer society principle for kids. And
Wow.
they're fantastic. I mean, there's as an adult, you read it and you're like, okay, I mean, you could go deeper if you want, but for the audience that it's after, it's an 11 out of 10. I highly recommend it. And it got me
Nice.
thinking. Do it?
Are they in the schools at all, those books, or no?
I don't know. I'm sure some based parents have, tried to get these past the board. I know in the states it's a little different. Every individual state gets to decide what textbooks or reading material are allowed in schools.
Right.
And some states are lazier than others. What they'll do is they'll model their book picks based on other states with a better reputation.
Sure.
And Texas is one of those models that other states use. And the book selection here in Texas, when I check in on it, it gets pretty contentious.
Right. And I mean, it should be in the schools anyway because they have, anal sex guides for kids, right? So.
Oh, you have that subscription too, huh? Okay. Man, I tell you what, last February's issue, unbelievable. Okay. But no,
That's
to
awesome.
continue, to continue the point, the other thing is that I grew up collecting baseball cards. I grew up with basketball cards,
Right.
and I my team always growing up. I love the Rockets. We went to go see games. I got to meet some of the players, and then I get other cards from other teams. And in the 80s, you didn't get to see a lot of players play, and so the only thing you knew about them was on a card.
Yeah, that's how I
And
learned a lot about players,
yeah,
like hockey players, baseball players, all that shit. Yeah.
yeah, totally. And there's a fun element to it because there's math involved for stats. There's just getting general interest and being inspired by good people that perform well at a skill they practice for years. But there's two other motivations. The second one has to be my father at an early age just beat into me, well, not beat, but forced into me the habit of reading. But it wasn't until years later where I figured out that I didn't know how to read. And I'm being a little, pedantic here, but um, the biggest problem I've had with reading is that you get a good book, and I love history, I love nonfiction. You find something and you highlight it, and then you close the book, and you never open it again. Where to go?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, and that's how, I mean, that's, you think you're reading, but I know this sounds pretty stupid to some of your listeners because, look, I'm not a smart guy. It takes me a long time to figure garbage out. Okay, and so there's another show that got my ear a year or two ago, and there's a gentleman named Richard Grove, and his team at Grand Theft World put on one heck of a show. And his team, like Tony Meyer and then Scott Armstrong, LD, I mean, they're all great guys. But what interested me is that Richard has a lot of the same books that my father had, and I have some of those too. And I go, wait a minute, okay, because another hurdle that a lot of people have, and thankfully I didn't have this hurdle because I had good influence, is you don't know what books to read.
Mm.
And that really started in the year 2000. And you're probably, I'm going to drift into some content here that you're probably aware of, but um, pretty much after 2000, there was this rash of biographies that were partisan, or they were trying to recontextualize a historical figure's life to fit some kind of social narrative. I'll give you an
Sure.
example. You remember, I don't know, when was that? Like 2006, 2007, where there was this big Lincoln biography where the whole thesis was whether or not he was a homosexual, right? And I get books like that, and I get frustrated because, like, I get a book about Andrew Jackson, but it's
Isn't
not
that
Andrew
kind of
Jackson.
like not really the fucking point of all of this shit, you know?
Yeah,
Like who
yeah, and
cares,
they,
right?
yeah, who cares? I want to know what they did, who they did it, and how the ripples have affected us today. And so that got me motivated because I feel like there's this market that's left untapped, and we're going back to the children. And there there's plenty of resources for people our age, slightly younger, definitely older, where we're with it. We've had some life experience, we know some history, we know the difference between all the Roosevelts, but there's nothing for kids or basically anybody under 20.
Mm.
And um, when I go places with my son, or I go places like a store, and it just saddens me that I see these children trading cards and playing these dumb card games. And I thought, what's the weirdest thing I could hear these kids ever say? And it just popped in my head, like, I'll trade you my John Foster Dulles for your COVID-19 card. I thought, hey, I got an idea. And I jumped into it head first. And I made every mistake.
Right, right.
So, and that's, I mean, anything that's worth doing is going to be hard.
Of
And I'm
course,
not
you're gonna
scared
make
of that.
mistakes along the way and perfect it as you go along.
Yeah, I'm not scared of that. I mean, in fact, my family's endured quite a bit. We've suffered lots of losses, and we've come back from it, and probably for the better. And this is just and plus, I'm, especially with photo and video, it's fun. It's just that I want to do something else where I can tap into more of a home based design career, something I can get some real personal satisfaction out of. And I haven't heard any real negativity from folks. I will admit there are some flaws with this first printing, but there's only one person out there that's found one flaw, and
Okay.
they're like, they must be autistic because
Was it like super hard to find?
I mean,
Can you
I
divulge that information?
I mean, let's just say, okay, I'll give you let's see if you can read between these lines. So I'm going to switch over. So this box right here, this is our first printing, and it's been out for about maybe 6 or 7 months. And I have gone through every single detail to make these as perfect as possible. And there is one card that doesn't have it has a punctuation error. And when these sell out, there is going to be another printing, but it's going to be an unlimited printing where all of those small little blemishes finally disappear.
Right.
But for the most part, these are legit. And the reason I say most part is because I started out doing this just with Photoshop. And then I what I would do is I would print out 4x6 prints at the local drugstore and fold them in half and put them between like pieces of cardstock and glue them and flatten them with
Mm.
books. And I must have made like 10 sets, and these are 90 subjects. And what my feeling was is that I need to get interest, and so I'm going to send stacks of these cards to people that I respect, that I think would actually get a kick out of this. And
Appreciate it for sure. Yeah.
boy did they. I mean, I did not expect the reaction I got. And I only left it at 90 cards. I thought, well, this is fine. I'm happy with this. But the problem, like everything, is that on the back of a card, you can only fit so much information. And I have tons
Sure.
of notes, tons and
Yeah.
tons and tons of notes about all these subjects. And so if I switch over here, got some cards here to show you. And by the way, at the end of this, we have a special game for your listeners. Well, not really a game.
Okay.
It'll be a giveaway. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open a pack of cards right here on video, and then now bear in mind it's got to be people for living in the United States. Okay, I mean, the postage only goes so far.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, and I will mail them the contents of that package. And but they have to use a secret code word, and we're gonna have to wait till the end of the episode to find all that out. Okay.
You're gonna have to sit through this one, guys.
That's right. Sit in it. Okay.
This is your punishment
So,
for not listening to my full episodes.
yeah. Yeah. Come on, y'all. Quit skipping around. I know you want to
Right.
skip because you don't like my ugly face. Okay. So the way this breaks down is that there are 90 subjects, and I split each subject into 3 cards. So because there's so much to each of these stories. So this particular card, we have Nelson Rockefeller. Okay. And the way this breaks down is you have a black border card, you have a silver bordered card, and you have a gold border card. Now, that does not determine their rarity because there are levels of rarity in this set. I want to give everybody the same feeling that all those kids have looking for the special ultra rare cards.
Beautiful.
Okay. Now, I've got 9 rare or ultra rare full cards, and 4 of them break down the history of gold in the United States, and 4 of them break down the history of silver in the United States. And that's 8. And then there's one more card about a specific coin that has something to do with our friends in the Middle East. And I'll just leave that as a surprise. So another tip I'll give people is that I went extra generous on the ultra rare cards per box. Future
Okay.
printings are going to have far less ultra rare cards. I do that to incentivize people to jump on a new series when they print. And I mean, I don't want to keep on spinning my wheels. You can interrupt me anytime.
No, keep going.
Okay. So when I say series, that means that series 2 is just around the corner, y'all. And
Right on.
I'm about maybe 10 cards away from completing series 2. And I've got a lot more surprises. It's not going to be just the same story, just with different art. And
Nice.
I can't reveal too much, but I will tell you that I am interested in other artists. There's a group of artists out there that see the world through our kind of lens, and they just don't get a lot of attention. And so I'm gathering a handful of artists that are also designing 1 card each for series 2. And so it won't just be my attempt at art.
So you're collaborating now. That's cool.
That's the deal. I want to grow. I want to grow.
Yeah.
I want to get more and more people involved. And
For
I'm
sure.
doing it in a way that I think is important. I'm doing it in a way where the artists actually own their artwork, and I'm just licensing it. So
Okay.
even when, because I mean, I do work for hire agreements all the time for photo and video, and you take pictures or video of something, and then boom, you don't have the rights to use your own work. And I
Right.
think that's terrible, especially if you do something really nice. And I don't want to operate that if I'm allowing other artists to join the project.
Sure. I don't know if you were aware, but my friend Ron over at the Wicked Planet, he's now doing a segment, or he's going to start doing a segment in his show where he takes a Plunderworld card and discusses it.
Well, hey, that's cool. All
Yeah, I
right.
thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that
And
is
I heard
cool.
that like after I scheduled you, so I was like, oh, that's awesome. I
Well,
didn't
and
know if
that's
you
the
knew
other
that or not.
thing. No, I didn't know that. I mean, I get periodic. There's a tremendous. I think it's called. Oh gosh, I need to give him a shout out. So hopefully, I don't share any screen here. I've got to find this guy because out of the kindness of his own heart, he made a complete YouTube review of his cards that he bought,
Very
and
cool.
I didn't ask. I wasn't expecting anything, and I was holding my breath the entire time because I mean, this is where the rubber meets the road. You know, what do people actually think?
Yeah,
And
for sure.
it didn't disappoint. He bought 6 boxes. Okay, I mean, he. If there's anybody that has a set, it's him. And
How
if you
much
could,
is one box?
one box is $65, and that is free
Okay,
shipping. Okay,
nice.
and
In US.
if you want to see, yes, if you want to see a really good breakdown from a collector's perspective, then I would recommend going to Wake of Truth on YouTube, and he's got a really good video detailing his opening and what he thinks.
Nice.
Um, but no, I'm always surprised. I every time I send out a box, I always include a survey link so people can give me their feedback. Because
Right.
I look, I have no ego. Tell me it sucks. Tell me what I did wrong. Come on, come
Hmm.
at, let's do it. Because that's the only way you're really going to face reality. I mean,
Right. And especially in the hands of the holder, the card holder themselves. Like
yeah,
that's where you got to find out the good and bad feedback for sure.
totally. I've gotten some really good feedback, and it's going to alter the way Series 2 looks, and that's and look, I have control over what I think is good content, but I need to respect the people that appreciate this and let them in on the design as well.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, how long have you been like researching conspiracy theories and stuff like that? Like you
I
seem
mean,
like a pretty seasoned vet.
oh, thanks. Um, I mean, I'd say off and on since Waco, and
Okay.
that's just that. I only say that because that was like my wake up moment. That's because I mean
Okay.
that happened. I mean,
I've never heard anybody say Waco was their wake up moment. That's pretty cool. I still
well,
remember it. I was probably about 13 years old at the time.
my dad's side of the family, when they would get together for holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever, they'd stay up till like 3, 4 in the morning talking about all the problems of the world, and I'd never heard some of the stuff that I heard my dad and my grandparents and my uncles talk about, and I always wanted to be a part of it, but I could never participate because I didn't know what they were talking about, but it sounded
Well,
great. You know what I mean?
well, it's because they were older too, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like
And
I like people listen to me talk about stuff like this when I'm at work, and they're like, "Dude, what the fuck are you talking about?" But it does seem like I've said it before on my show. Like it does seem that a lot of younger people are starting to wake up as to what's going on in the world,
I
and
know, isn't that
in this
great?
kind of fringe thing, right?
Well, yeah, because and this fits patterns, and one of the things that it fits
Everything's
is
connected, man.
yeah.
Everything.
And once you go down these rabbit holes, you start seeing just how awful it is. Just briefly on background, my dad was also into getting all kinds of weird stuff. This is before the internet. He was a dentist, and he'd meet people, and we'd listen to radio, and then we'd go to the magazine shops and get these strange catalogs, and we'd order tapes and movies about all kinds of weird subjects.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, we got in fact it was shortly after Waco where we got the VHS tapes made by Linda Thompson, in which she outlines all the evidence. She was kind of like the first one to blow the doors off of Waco, and I still remember there's this haunting shot where there's this kid that survived, and he was asked by a psychologist to draw pictures with a crayon as to what happened, and he draws the picture of a roof with a lot of marks on the top of it, and the psychologist says, "Well, what's that supposed to be?" And the kid says, "Those are all the bullet holes from the helicopter."
Holy shit.
Yeah. Now, do you think that kid's lying?
I don't
Okay.
think
I don't
so.
think so. Right? Yeah. Nobody coached that little kid.
Yeah. Oh, that's wild, man. And
But
I really didn't think David Koresh was too bad of a guy, honestly.
well, the recently there's been a few people because I listen to shows and there's a few people that make Waco their passion, and one of them is over at antiwar.com, Scott Horton. He every year does a retelling or a new version of Waco, whether he gets the survivor as an interview or some new book. Um, there's some others that attack Koresh's character as to what he was doing with those women. And after the research I've been looking into, nope, sorry folks, that has nothing to do with the warrant that the ATF entered on. None,
Right, right.
absolutely none. If that's what the case was, then why isn't it on the warrant? Okay, and I mean, I want to go down, Waco. I mean, that was just a big inspiration. And the key message takeaway is that it was at that age that I realized that if they want you, then they're going to spend millions of dollars to make sure that they got you.
For sure. They'll spin it every which way they want, right?
Damn straight. So what I got here on the video, just briefly, this is just a small sample of garbage that my family would get when we go to the bookstores. But some of your, I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is um this is a catalog called Loom Panics Unlimited, and I'm not going to flip through the whole thing, but I've held on to this thing for a long time, and it's basically just a catalog of all of those underground books and subjects that would make your heart race if you ever got caught in school with them.
Right, right.
Hardcore poaching, you know, emergency war surgery. You can learn how to, fix wounds for only, what is that, $15? Holy cow, that's a bargain, and there's other kinds of, more risque topics in here. But no, I used to flip through this thing like crazy. I'd take it to school with me. I'd show friends, and then I was that weird kid that had all the weird, cool stuff that I noticed right
Probably
away.
when the teacher was teaching whatever they were teaching, you were just sitting there reading that.
Yeah, or something else.
Yeah,
Because I mean,
same here.
I didn't fit in with the jocks. I didn't fit in with the dorks. I was kind of just like my own thing,
I
and
think
people
that's
left.
what a lot of us have in common. Truth seekers have that in common. They were never really a part of a clique in school. I wasn't. I was
Yeah,
my own person, long hair and a jean jacket, while other people were a jock or a goth or a nerd or special ed, and then there was just me walking around by myself, like, hey, saying hi to everybody, being friendly to everyone, you know.
shake the sweat out of your Gretzky mullet. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
no, I just but what interests me is that, like, when you have something that's kind of transgressive and new, it's amazing how many students or other kids my age would want to crowd around and see it. All of a sudden, it's popular, you know,
Yeah.
and that lesson stuck with me for a long time. So I'm going to give everybody a little tip when it comes to private business. And I teach this to my son, and it's a magician's trick. So I don't care if you're an auto mechanic. I don't care if whatever, if you have a role where you have to do something in front of a group of people with your hands or whatever, try to figure out something that looks difficult and amazing in front of a total, noob, okay?
Hmm.
And master it and learn to present it without drawing attention. Now, the reason I say that is because you want people to see that. You want people to notice something you did that looks awesome, but you don't want to announce it, okay?
Right.
Because that's going to leave an impression in their mind that, holy cow, wow, this guy really knows what he's doing. And it's kind of, I mean, it is manipulation. And but they're going to remember you, and they're going to remember you more than anybody else that does that job. And so um I guess where I'm going with that is kind of a segue, because briefly, I don't want to bore people to death with books, but um when it comes to researching, I've got to go through books. I've got to go through all kinds of stuff. And there's a couple of essential books that everybody needs to get their hands on, and obviously one of the first is Edward Bernays' Propaganda. Okay,
Uh-huh.
it is. I mean, he's got lots of content, but what most people don't realize is that it's like a consumer's version of Sigmund Freud, because guess what? He's related.
Oh shit, no way.
Oh yeah, and he writes and talks about his experience and how that bled into his personal opinions. But public relations is also another good book, and that's a buzzword. Okay, it's when Bernays and other people in the government use the word public relations, that is a politically correct term for propaganda. Okay, pure
Okay.
and simple. And these books tell you exactly what he did. And I don't have a card directly about Bernays yet, but I do have a couple of cards in Series One where he affected the minds of the entire country. So World War One, um, World War One, the United States was never supposed to enter World War One, and so there were two events that happened. One was the sinking of the Lusitania, and the other was the discovery of the Zimmerman telegram, in which Germany was trying to urge Mexico to invade the United States. Now, Bernays worked with a public relations firm to sell the idea of war to the American people.
Mm.
And he did it through Liberty bonds. And they wanted to raise money for the war. And they had these Liberty bonds to be patriotic and support the war. And there's footage of this online, where they would hire like Charlie Chaplin, Douglas Fairbanks to go to these massive rallies in New York. There's footage of a rally in New York, right there on Wall Street, where there's like 300,000 people there just to see Charlie Chaplin. And
Jesus.
and everybody there was to raise money for the bond effort for World War One. And I think they had about 4 or 5 bond raising parties in New York or around that area. But that was all up to Bernays. He used the power of celebrity to sell war.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and it's it's those kind of details that make you say words like "that's incredible" or go "Holy crap, I never knew
Yeah.
that."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
And
there
it
and
doesn't really it doesn't fall far from the tree that we're in today either. With celebrities picking
absolutely.
their opinions, you know? It's the
And
same
thankfully,
shit.
well, they're losing power, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
I, I, I mean, I think that's fantastic. I mean, the other day, I mean, because I pay attention when we go out and I listen to people. I mean, not because I'm a weirdo, but you can't help it here. And I remember we were at a bookstore and there was this book for Lady Gaga or whatever, and these young girls were walking by, and they didn't recognize her. And I go, oh my god, this is great. They're losing power. This is
Yeah.
awesome. Okay.
No, I think they are. A lot of us truth seekers we're already, we already took the blinders off our eyes, so we're just like, whatever, nothing you say fucking matters to me.
Yep. And even if it sounds convincing, just because it's coming out of their mouth, I still ain't going to trust it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they've lost all respect,
Yep.
in lieu of the lockdowns, especially in Canada. My God, I mean, that's horrible. I cannot believe what they did up there.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Plus, the trucker convoy, the Freedom Rally,
Yeah, yeah.
and what our douchebag prime minister did.
I know, man. Prime
Freezing
Minister
people's
Castro,
bank accounts and fucking like, come on, dude. And you're calling Trump a dictator? Like,
right?
how soon you forget, people?
But that's the thing, you and I both know this, but this is a hard lesson for people that listen to your show to accept. It's a hard lesson for me to accept. It's that hypocrisy does not work. It doesn't.
Right.
Okay. It's just because the reason is that look at public school. Okay. How many millions of children are vomited out into the world every year graduating that don't know anything? You can't fight that. So there's always a new wave of dummies that are going to swallow whatever they say.
For sure.
So it's a
It
numbers
happened.
game.
It happened to me, dude. I went to college, and I went to college for multimedia design and production. And when I entered college for that, I expected to learn from the ground up. But what I learned was when I got in there, most people already knew what they were doing, and that's how the faculty started teaching us was like we already knew what we are doing. And I'm sitting here like I have no fucking clue what's going on right now. And I'm looking at people around me and I'm like, how the fuck do you know what you're doing? Like they're not teaching us anything.
No,
It's crazy.
and they're not going to help you either catch up.
No. And
Uh,
I was supposed to do 2 years and I was a year and a half in. I was just starting the last semester and I was having severe health problems and I just ended up dropping out because I had lost all fucking interest and B, my health problems, right? And my friends, my peers were like, dude, just finish the fucking semester. Just finish it up. I'm like, I can't do it.
Well,
And I
God
still know
bless you.
nothing about it,
I mean,
except for
that's
what I learned on
okay.
my own.
I mean, it doesn't sound like you miss it.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I did like the people, but that was about it. Just like high
Well, that's
school.
how they get
It was
you.
like the
Yeah, that's the
people.
thing. It's the friends, it's the social aspect, and that's how they trick a lot of parents. It's like, well, how are how are you going to get your kids socialized? I'm like, well, first of all, they're not getting socialized. I don't like that word. Okay, that's not happening. All
Right.
right, they're going to be an independent thinker, and they're going to think rings around your kid because while they're too busy reading the instructions, my kid's written the instructions. All right,
Sure.
and as far as like just this might be a break in the flow here, but another book I'd highly recommend. This is the very first book that I read that like spoke to me. Okay, and
None dare call it conspiracy. By who?
it's by Gary Allen, and I mean, this is a great book for people that look at. I mean, you're familiar with Tragedy and Hope.
Yes.
Okay, that's a monster. Okay, I mean that book can choke a goat, you know. And you look at that sucker and you go, "Holy cow, man! I don't know if I can dive into that." Well, no problem. Get this book. It's small, okay. And Gary Allen borrows tons and tons of stuff from um, Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley, and he puts it together in a cohesive way so it doesn't sound like some crazy person is copying from Wikipedia. You know,
Right.
um, it's not the best book. I'm just going to
Yeah,
say, as
because
far an
Wikipedia
introduction.
is where you want to go if you want to research
Well, you know what?
conspiracy, right?
Well, honestly, another slight diversion. You'd be surprised what kind of stuff slips through Wikipedia
Sure,
if you
sure.
know where to look.
Yeah.
You know, like there's still you can still get on Wikipedia and look up book burning in Nazi Germany, and it tells you which books they were burning. I'm like, whoa, are you sure you want to put that on Wikipedia, guys?
Right, right, yeah.
Yeah. So none dare call it conspiracy is a really good book. It's not the best, but this book is better. It's about the same length, and this is by John Stormer, and it's similar in title. And this one pretty much covers a lot of American history up until the election of Richard Nixon.
Okay.
And I like this book specifically because it goes into more detail as to the Soviet or the communist invasion or subversion of our government. And he names names. And I've got a few tabs in here I don't want to open just yet, but I will mention that this right here, this is when I started getting into the cards. One of the things that got me was is that the common subjects people can research, but then there are these obscure names, there are these obscure moments that don't get any ink, and that's what I wanted to try to spin my subjects into. And so there's a figure that plays prominently in this book called George Counts. And George Counts, he's an educator, and he invented social studies for children, and it is a total socialist attempt to brainwash your kids, because his problem is he didn't like the idea of children learning in their own communities, at their own church, having some legacy and roots where they're from. No, 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 we can't have that. We need
Right,
children aware of what's going on in Russia or Sudan. And it what it does is it politicizes your children. So they're
right.
thinking about all
Yeah.
these big United Nations goals instead of, how come, Reverend John is sick and nobody's helping at church.
Wow. How
And
successful was he with that?
I think you can answer that question. Yeah, I mean, dude, been looked outside recently.
Right?
So, those are the kind of details that draw my eye. I'm like, okay, because you're going to read this book and you're going to go, okay, yeah, there was a congressional investigation. Yeah, yeah, McCarthy, you know, communists, George Counts, and you'll read past that name and you'll never think of it again.
Yeah.
Okay. But there is a ton of material on George Counts. His entire publishing history is on archive.org. And man, that guy was a foaming, red blooded, you know, onion sucking Soviet, you know?
Go on, let it out.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, this
okay.
this guy, I mean, what a turd. Okay. So um that gets into strategy and technique, and that's what we're up against. We are up against over easily 2,000 years of propaganda, and it's all about technique. And I think the next book people should read is just Bite the Bullet and Get Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. Okay.
I've heard this one.
Now,
I've
this
heard
is
of
a
this
tough
one.
book to read because this is the opposition. These are the bad guys. Okay. And what he basically does is he gives you his anecdotes about how he helped organize small communities to influence elections and completely drain the social services sector when it comes to government support.
Sounds familiar.
Yes. And the reason I say I recommend reading it is not because you just want to shake your head and get mad, but because these are the same techniques that we need to use for good.
Right. We have to fight fire with fire.
That's right. And one of the
Yeah.
rules is to hack pop culture. All right. And if you can hack pop culture, then you got an avenue into the minds of the youth, and that's our
Right.
future. So it doesn't take long. It really doesn't. All you got to do is get people laughing or smiling or invested emotionally, and you could put any message you want in there for good or bad.
Yep.
That's how Hollywood
I've
works.
I've heard something recently on another podcast where they were discussing Elon Musk, and they were talking about how, like, his background is like super evil because his dad and all that shit. They were like fucking scum, right? And Elon's pretty much like rewriting his history as he goes. And that's what the elites do as well. They rewrite their history so that they can still look like the good guys in the end, right? And we have to learn how to do the same thing, where we have to learn just how fucking evil these people are and be like them, but use it for the good.
Yep. I mean, I can't agree with that more. It's just when I guess a good analogy would be like going back to magicians. When you see the trick, then you're no longer baffled. You see the
Right.
machinery of it. You understand the concepts, and that's true in everything. There's that concept in the trivium or the quadrivium when it comes to education, and that is you have to understand the vocabulary of what you're studying
Yep.
and how it
Absolutely.
fits together. And that's key, especially in what we're talking about. Some of these same, and look, I'm not knocking anybody. I mean, you find something that sounds amazing and you immediately want to tell everybody, and God bless you. We need people like that. So a couple years ago, people were foaming at the crotch because they got the audio of Richard Nixon talking about Bohemian Grove. Remember that?
Right. Yep.
Okay. Well, that's not exactly true. And I'll tell you why. Because I got his memoirs, and Richard Nixon. Oh, I don't know if you see that. He likes to write. Now, I'm never going to read this cover to cover. Okay, never,
How many
because
pages is that? And how
oh
how
my,
big is the text?
tell you what, this gives me an excuse to open up to my section that I want
It's
to
a
talk about
it's like a tome.
because yeah, it's beefy, and it's easily about 1,100 pages. That's with the index. Um, but it's chronological. And one of the things I love about doing this kind of research is I love books with indexes because I can go to a used bookstore and I can flip through the index and go, holy crap, there's a name I haven't
Yeah.
seen in a while.
Right.
And so I find this book, and I know Richard Nixon, and I know what he said. This is going to be hard to do on this little crappy camera. Hold on. But there's a couple sections where he actually talks about Bohemian Grove,
Okay.
believe it or not. And let me tell you something. Richard Nixon loved Bohemian Grove. He loved it. He'd been going there since 1950. Okay. And he met Eisenhower there. He met Reagan there. And all the people that went to Bohemian Grove loved to hang out with Herbert Hoover. If you know anything about Bohemian Grove, it's separated into camps. And
Okay.
Hoover had the biggest camp, and his was called the Caveman Camp. And I'm quoting Richard Nixon. It's the Caveman Camp. And the context of his statement that was recorded was late in his attendance of Bohemian Grove, because at the time, because this was like maybe 15 years after he had first gone to Bohemian Grove when he made that statement. And the reason is that there was a sect of the San Francisco class that were into all kinds of alternative lifestyles, and they brought that with them to Bohemian Grove. And that is what Richard Nixon didn't like. He didn't like the corrupting of the, original intent, whatever that is.
I was going to ask you, what was the original intent of Bohemian Grove?
Well, that's the thing, because you beat me to the punch, because this is why I'm never going to read this book cover to cover.
Was it like a more pure intent, and now it's completely corrupted?
No, it's all networking. It's always been corrupt. I mean, for
Okay.
crying out loud, they're going there. I mean, the people that are really into it. I mean, you've seen all the videos where people sneak in and you see the
Yeah.
crowd and these people going through the cremation of care ceremony, and they're loving it. It's like they're vampires getting their juice on.
Right. Right.
The operative
Well,
word
they
here.
they kind of like when they go there, they can just like be who they are, right? Like completely, like their full shadow self.
In a way, but there's lots that you can infer. But if we go back to Bernays, one of the things, or not even Bernays, if you go back to Hegel, you're looking at this thesis, antithesis, and synthesis going on. And I think that's on display fully, no matter when Bohemian Grove is held. And the idea is that you have a clique of businessmen, you have a clique of artists, and you have a clique of politicians. Now, in the real world, how are those three influencing each other? You see how that connects?
Right.
Yeah, you have either artists or politicians or businessmen pushing some sort of goal or um, operation or experiment, and each sect can work on methods to make it more palatable to their
Sure.
markets.
Sure.
And I think that's the primary intent behind Bohemian Grove. I mean, for crying out loud, you can go online and see pictures of uh, Queen Elizabeth's brother there, and it's I mean, this is the guy that hung out with Epstein. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, now, I mean I mean, my point is that it's not that Bohemian Grove is good because Richard Nixon liked it. My point
Right.
is that when you understand that, it puts another dimension or layer on it. Um, Nixon also talks about the machinery of how the grounds work. There is a main amphitheater there, and it's only reserved for people that are given an audience to say something important. And Nixon was given that honor. Eisenhower was given that honor. And a lot of the policies and even speeches that they would present to the American public were practiced at Bohemian Grove.
Okay. And I guess a lot of pop stars, do they go there too? They must go there and then like learn what to say or what ideas to pitch in their music or something like that. I don't know. And then
Well, yeah,
if they get out of hand and start speaking out like in reverse of it or against it, then see you later.
well, now this is just theory. I don't know. I like the way you're going with it. My personal opinion is that most pop stars are dumber than rocks, and they wouldn't understand symbolism if you drew it on a map for them. And
Yeah.
so what I think is that, like, for example,
Not
every
all of
time
them,
people,
though.
well, maybe, I mean, again, I mean, we're just spitballing here, but I would think, based on my experience in production and what I see, is that you have higher level people that produce this crap. You have higher level people that do the artwork, the choreography, the set design, and that does not come from the pop star.
Right.
So I think these are the people going to Bohemian Grove that you need to know, not the pop
Sure.
star.
Right. 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 The
But I
people
don't know.
who are
I'm
kind of like plotting along with them, making sure they stay in line. Hey, put this in your music video. You know.
Yeah, but I could be wrong. I mean, there could have been a year where, like, shoot, Olivia Newton-John went to Bohemian Grove and put her mouth on something besides a microphone. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know.
Guaranteed, John Travolta did.
Yeah, you think? Cost him one entire son. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He
So
fed him to the owl.
oh Lord. But yeah,
Fuck.
let's see. I just want to find something real quick that made me just like lose my mind. Like, oh my God, I found something. And two of those things happened the other day. So I'm in series. By the way, let's take a break real quick. Is it okay if I just show you some preview cards for series two?
Sure.
Okay, yeah, I don't want to give your viewers something to look at other than my ugly face. Okay. So I'll summarize some of these as we go. Um, and so I don't know if you can see all this. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so one of the things in series two I really want to highlight is the Italian years of lead period. And if you're familiar with that part of history, it involves the P2 Masonic Lodge, it involves the CIA, and it involves the Vatican Bank. Okay. I mean, this story is nuts, dude. And there are so many players in this story that I'm devoted like I think 7 or 8 cards just to this
Wow.
subject. It is unbelievable. And the reason I want this to be in series two is because I'm a firm believer that my audience, they need foundational knowledge. I mean, really, honestly, a lot of these cards, your audience and people our age, they're going to see these cards and go, oh, I know about this. I know about
Right.
this.
Right.
I know
Right.
about this. But that's not, I mean, hold on,
That's
y'all.
that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. But we need some foundational knowledge for the younger folks or folks that haven't caught up, you know? And the reason I chose the P2 Masonic Lodge Vatican Bank connection is because this is actual real proof. This is a real example in modern day of secret societies running the government and the church. Okay? I mean, this is happening in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Get
Okay?
into the story.
Okay, so I'm going to jump around a little bit because I could spend 8 hours on this subject. I'll go as fast as I can. So our first
Cole's
card here
notes.
is, ugh, no kidding. So bear with me, y'all. If I start drawing out, forgive me. So this is Archbishop Paul Marcinkus. He is the actual banker at the Vatican, and he was in charge of approving loans to a special bank in Italy, and we'll get to them in a little bit. Now, what's interesting about this guy is he has no background in banking. Hey, red flag.
Wow.
Yeah. And after the scandal, he was sent back to the United States where he retired in Arizona and died. And every time people would try to talk to him about it, he would avoid them. He's one of the few people that got out of this alive. There's obviously more to his story, but hey, we only got a little bit of time here. So moving on. Um, oh, I got these out of order. Let's see. Since we're talking about P2, let me just go to my cheat sheet here. Sorry, y'all. Doing it real time. Okay,
Real
cool.
time. We're good. Don't worry.
Yeah, all right. So next up we got Roberto Calvi. And Roberto Calvi is the banker at in Italy that was taking loans from the Vatican, and he was also taking drug money from the mafia. And he was creating all kinds of shadow shell corporations in South America.
Are you putting their actual face on the face card? Is
Yeah,
that
I
what I'm
am.
seeing? Okay. Okay.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah, I'm like that.
I run this on my cell phone this whole show,
Oh, I'm
so
sorry.
I
Okay.
gotta kind of like move my head and check it out. Yeah.
Well, this is interesting, and this is where the Masonic connection comes in, at least for the public. You see, when all this went down, this guy was in a lot of trouble, and the Italian authorities wanted him, and so he fled to London, and he was found hanging from Blackfriar Bridge in London, and he had bricks in his pocket, and he had like I want to say close to $20,000 in different currencies, and
Wow.
they thought it was suicide. Like, yeah, okay. Well, it turns out years later, his son pushed for an investigation, and it was determined that it was murder because who puts bricks in their pockets? And they interviewed a few mobsters, and they talked about how the word was out that Calvi had to die. And the interesting thing is that P2 Masonic Lodge, they their Italian nickname was Black Friar.
Jesus.
Dude, the symbolism's thick, right? Okay, so let's jog right along. Don't worry, some of these other cards I'm skipping. We'll get back to. Just hey, talk about that. Talk about that. Talk about that. Hold on, we'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get there.
On a side note, kind of relating to this, my cousin was he snitched on the Italian mafia in Toronto, and they
Oh,
put him in Lake Ontario in cement boots.
holy shit!
Yeah.
Oh my
I never
gosh.
met him. It was before my time, but it happened.
Well, I'm sorry, but I mean, dude. I
Yeah.
mean, if you're gonna go out, I guess that's the way to do it. I don't know.
It's nuts, man.
Oh, um, well, speaking of loss, we have Aldo Moro. Um, now, as far as foundational knowledge goes, this little subset, I guess, of cards about the P2 connection, it introduces a lot of concepts of Italian politics post World War II. And I think it's a neglected area, especially for school children. And I think Italian politics in this period are incredibly deep and rich and scary. And this is one of those topics discussing the Aldo Moro death. At the time, um, you see, Italian politics, the way their parliament works is that any party can be represented, and enough of a majority can even put socialists in power. And there was a large political party there called the Democratic Party, and I'm sorry, Christian Democrats is what they're called. Obviously, different in Italian. And Aldo Moro was a member, and he also used to be prime minister. Well, he brokered a deal to allow violent, terrorist, rebellious cells in Italy to join the political party, and that angered some other militant groups, and so they kidnapped him, and he was found dead in the back of a car, and it's unfortunate because his own party and government turned their back on him because there was some dirt leaked about these officials and how they were actually being controlled by P2 and Vatican interests. Um,
That sounds pretty well executed.
yeah, literally and figuratively.
Literally. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I jumped around a lot just for the sake of time on that one, but it's a sad, sad story, and it is filled with some unbelievable coincidences. It looks like it might have been a false flag gone wrong, but
Right.
whatever.
That's wild. Uh,
Um, oh, here we go.
one question.
Please.
Um what's the total amount of cards, like individual cards
Oh, yeah.
in the
So
first set series?
so the way I kind of need to couch that a little bit. Earlier I said I made 90 cards, and I thought that was okay.
All
But
right.
then I thought
Yeah.
if I went to a store and I got a box of cards and all I got were 90 and they were randomly inserted, I would be I would feel like I got ripped off. And because I have so much notes and I made 3 cards of each and ultra rare cards, there's 279 cards in the set.
Oh shit. Okay.
All right. So if you get all of them, 279. Got a checklist. That's probably how Series 2 is going to shape out. I'm going to do at least 279, maybe more.
And they're
Um,
numbered.
they're numbered.
Okay.
It's organized. I mean, it's just like getting baseball cards, only about your favorite evil stories that you only
Yeah.
read about in books. Um,
Did were you are you familiar with, and was this influenced by somewhat by the Illuminati card game?
I'm going to say about 10%. And I'm
Okay.
going to couch that because um, I always hated the trading card game concept. I hated it. I didn't understand it, and it attracted like a scene of people that made me feel disgusted.
Kind of like
Um,
Magic the Gathering.
yes, totally. Oh, I'm sorry if anybody's into that, but dude,
My
yeah,
did you hear about the guy who won the or who found the One Ring card in Magic, and he sold it to Post
no,
Malone for over 1 million?
dude.
He was
Okay,
my manager at work.
well, man, you know everybody. What's going
It's
on here? What?
crazy, dude.
Man, you know some folks.
Nicest guy too. Like he was like the type of guy to take his shirt off your back for you, off his back for you.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm not, I don't have a personal animus towards anybody into that sort of thing.
No,
It's
no,
just, I'm more of an,
it's yeah.
yeah. I
It's
mean,
it's
it's
kind
like,
of very nerdy, but
well,
whatever.
and like, I can be nerdy too. It's just that, I go, it's just real briefly, there's a circle of friends I ran with, and I didn't know they were into role playing games and magic. And I had planned a big fishing trip because I love to fish. Oh my God, I love to fish.
Right.
And they didn't have a lot of experience. And I'm like, no problem, dude, no problem. We'll bring my gear. I'll show you what to do. I'll bait the hook. You'll catch fish. Just bring some beer and let's have some fun. And they're like, oh, we can't. We have our magic tournament
Yeah,
this
yeah.
weekend. I'm
I
like,
figured that was what you were gonna say.
yeah. And I'm like, dude, we're gonna go catch some, 65-pound black drum. What's
Can you
up?
put it on pause for a weekend?
I know, yeah. I mean, what's the deal? So, anyways, yeah, and they're so Steve Jackson releases those cards. Now, at the time, I had already been, reading a little bit, and this is after Waco, and I was, kind of, I mean, I'm still kind of naive, but I saw these cards and I went, oh, wow, somebody did it. Somebody made something that I might like. And so I got a couple, and a couple of things jumped out at me. Number one, I didn't like the fact that the paper felt cheap. All right.
Okay, yeah.
It felt cheap. And then the other thing I don't like is that one side of every card is completely wasted. It's the same design on the back of every card. And I know
Right, right.
it's like a playing card. It's just for randomization. I get that. But that just never sat well with me. And plus, I get asked all the time if the cards I made are a game. I go, no, 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 they're not a game because I'm not into that. And plus, I'm not intelligent enough to make a game.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that shit's complex, man. But
Yeah.
aren't you kind of blown away though that that game kind of fucking predicted a lot of shit?
I do know that the FBI raided his headquarters in Austin.
Okay,
Yeah, they were very interested in what he published, and I don't think it was because it was subversive. I think it's because it hinted at things on the horizon. That's what I
right.
think.
How do you think he knew about that? Do you
Well,
think it
it's
was
kind
just
of
like
like
critical thinking and like this
no.
is probably what's going to happen?
Well, I don't know.
Kind of like
I'm not
how
going to
Ted
speak for the man.
Kaczynski did.
Well, I don't know if I'm not going to speak for the man. All I can do is really kind of compare it to other incidents. Like I'm sure you're familiar with the X Files, and I'm sure you're familiar that there was an interview that Chris Carter did in which he said that his writers would sometimes receive material from retired agents.
Okay,
And then if you think that's bunk, all you got to do is watch the very first episode of their spin-off show, The Lone Gunman. Have you
right.
seen that?
Yeah,
Yeah. And gee, I wonder where they got the idea for that. You know,
yeah.
it's
They were the typical, uh, conspiracy theorists in their mother's or father's basement, like with the billboards and connecting everything with red string.
I guess, but that's such an ugly stereotype. I've met
It
lots of
is. It
people.
is. And that's what people think of people like us. It's fucking
Yeah.
nuts.
And it's not. We're regular. I mean, most of the people I meet and talk to we're just like blue collar folk that just,
That's it,
I
man. I
mean,
have a 9 to 5 and I do this on the
yeah.
side, you know?
I mean, what's the common internet cliche? I just want to grill, dude. You know?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I but if I wasn't into this, then it would probably be something just as ostracized and maligned as anything else.
Well,
Um,
I think once again, I think that's what separates us from other people is that we like to do things that are outside of the norm, let's say.
well, like for example, like um, my wife and I talk about it. God bless my wife. I mean, I picked a fantastic woman because we agree on pretty much everything, even this kind of stuff.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
I mean, there are nights where like I got a job to get to at like 9 in the morning, but it's 2 in the morning and we're still talking, about, oh, I just read this. Oh, you're kidding. Oh, well, that ties into what I just read and blah, 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 blah. And we just go
That's a
nuts.
blessing, brother.
Yeah. And this might be a new fetish, but sometimes I like doing it because it's a turn on. Okay. Don't tell anybody. Whoops. Okay.
I
Um,
like doing my wife conspiracy style.
yeah, I mean, you got dirty talk. You wouldn't believe what we talk about. Yeah. So,
It was the
um,
driver that shot JFK. Oh my
yeah, totally. Okay, it's
god.
not that bad, folks, um, but yeah, I think you and I and anybody watching, what we can do is we take critical analysis, okay, and we understand that, like, all what I love reading about old experiments. In
We're
fact,
also open to interpretation. We're open-minded
yeah,
enough to like consider other things that
mhm,
have been discussed in mainstream media, you know?
yeah. And so, like, one of the things is like, sometimes if we're going to the grocery store, I'll treat it like a field trip with my kid. And I say, okay, field trip. We're going to the grocery store and we're going to learn some stuff. Check this out. And so we go to the toothpaste aisle and I pull up a box of toothpaste and I go to the back and I say, check this out. It says, use one small dot of toothpaste and do not swallow. And if you swallow, here is the poison control number to call. And I go, isn't that interesting? Why would they put that on there if it's so
Right.
safe? One little dot is enough for them to put the number for poison control on the box. But they make it taste like bubble gum.
Sure.
And then the other thing, we go to the cereal aisle, and I go, hey, check it out! All these middle shelves. Notice all those cartoon characters. Where are their eyes directed? They're directed at the floor, so little kids can look up and see them.
Right.
Okay, you know, and my kid instantly gets it. He goes, oh, I get it. That has nothing to do with the cereal. I go, you're dadgum right. It has everything to do
Exactly.
with just making you want it. Okay,
Yeah.
dadgum
And
right.
regarding the toothpaste, isn't it funny that the FDA just admitted that fluoride is a neurotoxin?
And that's actually in series one. I've got a card all about fluoride and what it does to your brain.
Oh, my friend,
Okay.
who's excited to have you on, is he asked if there was a flat Earth card.
Okay. I'm not getting into flat Earth. Okay. Sorry, gang.
You're not a
Um,
flurfer?
no, and you know, I'm only going to go with things that I can back up. And
Sure,
look,
sure.
I'm not going to look. I know some people right now. They're bleeding from the ears right now. Um, all I'm going to say about that is, I think that some of the questions they raise are very, very compelling.
Yep.
Okay. But I'm a photographer. I have been doing video and photo for well over 20 years. And one of the things I'm into is astrophotography. And if you've ever looked into astrophotography, you know there's a special mount you have to get for your camera. And you could buy these online, and they have cheap models and they have expensive models. But what it is it automatically calculates the rotation of the earth, and it slowly orbits your camera for a long exposure at night. Because if you've ever gone out and tried to take a long exposure photo of like the moon, even for like 30 seconds, the moon's going to look blurry because
Right. It's
because
moving.
there's
Yeah.
motion. Now, if the earth is flat, then what scientists just happened to come up with the same exact mathematical equations to make this device work?
Right.
I don't know. All I know is that this works, and it works on the principle that we're rotating.
But is it us rotating or everything else?
Or this guy just happened against trillion to one odds, just happens to come up with the same exact math to make it work.
Right.
I mean,
No, I'm not like I'm definitely not married to the flat Earth
yeah, I'm
or
not
the. I'm
either.
open.
And
I'm open to everything. You know what I mean? Like it could be that. It could be the Earth could be a
so
penis for all I know.
yeah, it could be. That'd be awesome, dude. I hope Texas is on the left testicle. That's all I can say. Yeah. But I mean, I'm not going to get into aliens. I'm not going to get into the Loch Ness monster or any of that
Okay.
stuff. I'm not
No
going to get in
cryptids in
Nessie.
there.
No cryptids. The only time that might ever come up in a subject is if I see an actual government document where they're pouring money and wasting our time and research into it. Okay, that's the
You want
only
to
time.
educate. You want to educate the children on facts.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
plus, if let's just say there was, sprinkled in series two, you have these esoteric cryptid subjects. Well, that kind of like goes against your credibility when the parents are looking at them,
Right.
you know. And I'm not knocking people that are into that. Look, there's some
No, it's
subjects,
understandable. Yeah.
yeah. It's just the way I treat this is there is enough real stuff out there where you don't even have to approach those,
Right.
cryptid subjects.
This
Um,
shit could open your mind without having to look at stuff like that for sure.
Yeah, and it makes things more digestible. So
Well, where did the name Plunder World come from?
Plunderworld, well, Plunderworld is just basically a pun of underworld, and the concept of plunder is, I'd say, central. I'd say that's the central verb of the establishment that has been subjugating countries and continents for centuries. It's
Okay.
all about plunder. They're plundering your work. They're plundering your family. They're plundering your identity. Um, it's it's a striking word. It um plus a lot of the authors and people that I respect, that's how they refer to it. And I guess the first incarnation of plunder in regards to this particular subject comes from the East India Company and Great Britain and their colonization efforts in China, even in the Middle East, and especially during the period of the Great Game. That was just prior to, I'm sorry, that would have been prior to World War One, and that's where you have this collision of money, government, Masonic influence, trying to control trade routes. And I'm drifting a little bit only because I want to go back to foundational knowledge. How much different is a child's education going to be if they learn about the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand is what created World War One,
Mm.
or if they learn about the great game in which Britain and Russia were manipulating the background of other countries to protect their colonization efforts. And
Right.
I think because if you tell a child or even an adult what the history of Masonic influence is, they're going to roll their eyes. But if you tell them that story in the context of the Great Game and how you had British Masons in foreign, strange lands doing espionage and trying to stay safe, and if they identified themselves as a Mason to other known Masons, well, then they had a place to stay. They
Sure.
had food. They had refuge. And when you understand it from that perspective, all of a sudden it becomes more logical. It doesn't sound like hokey pokey, let's just put on clothes and act silly, right?
Right.
So it's a way of espionage, at least when it was used in a massive scale during that period. In fact, if anybody's interested, there's a great movie that everybody needs to see, and it's called The Man Who Would Be King with
Okay.
Sean Connery and Michael Caine. And it is a movie all about the Great Game. And they are using Masonic handshakes. They're talking about the
Uh,
craft. and they're trying to establish their own kingdom for the British crown in Afghanistan. And it is a fantastic movie. Oh my
What
gosh.
what year was that around, do you
That would
think?
have been 70, 74,
Okay, okay.
75, I think.
I'm definitely gonna have to watch that. I
Oh
love
my God.
film, so
Okay, let's put it this way. I know you've seen Network, right?
I haven't.
Oh my God, dude.
Oh,
Dude. Okay, you
Network?
got to.
Network? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've
Okay.
seen
All right. Okay.
Network.
Thank
Yeah, yeah,
God.
yeah.
All right. All right. Okay. So,
At
uh,
first I thought you said that work, as in that
okay. All right.
movie.
Sorry, I
Okay.
mumble.
Yeah,
This
Network,
is,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I would say that Network is to modern media what Man Who Would Be King is to nation building today.
Okay.
I mean, it's that good. And you got to pay attention because some things are going to jump out at you right away and you're going to go, holy crap, I know what they're talking about. So, anyways,
Right.
briefly, I want to just get into a little bit here. So, one of the subjects I got into was the history of the Middle East because I never knew much about the Middle East as a kid. I mean, who does? Okay. And when you start researching the Middle East, you come across some interesting names, namely the Philbys, like St. John Philby and his son Kim. And
Okay.
then you start researching their legacy and you find out they were British spies. Not only that, Kim Philby was a Russian spy. And he infiltrated
Wow.
MI6, he infiltrated the CIA, and nobody knew. Nobody. And there was a group of guys, they're known as the Cambridge Five. And Philby is one of them, even though he didn't go to Cambridge. But it connects people like Guy Burgess, Anthony Blunt, and Kim Philby. And there is another spy, and a lot of people seem to think it's a Rothschild. Okay. And it so happens to be Victor Rothschild, who is the third Baron of the Rothschild family. And
Huh.
I mean, this is a huge, dense read, and I'm not going to go through all my notes. I got some buried there in the pages too. But the aha moment is that, excuse me, Victor Rothschild in interviews always denied what he did at Cambridge because he was a member of a secret society at Cambridge called the Cambridge Apostles. And they had a reputation for doing really weird, gross, nasty things. And he always denied it. He said, no, 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 no. No, no, no. That's all made up. That's just rumors. We do things in secret and people seem to think that we're animals. But I got this book by Robert Bruce Lockhart, and he's important because he actually helped fund the Bolshevik Revolution with Alfred Milner. That's a different story. But um,
Are those years the diary years?
yes, sir.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
And so there's several volumes, but this is the volume that I'm interested in because once again I love indexes, and in the back I see a reference for Victor Rothschild. And it's hard to read here, but I'll summarize. So Lockhart talks about meeting Victor Rothschild at a train platform, and they got into a conversation, and they were talking about his days at Cambridge. And right here in casual conversation, Victor Rothschild admits that he and his brothers would dope cocktails of a lot of young girls from London and make them pass out, and they would do things to him. So that kind of blows holes into his whole his uh, his denial of what happened at Cambridge. And so
Wow.
he has so many connections to the spy network. He let them live at their flat. He gave them money. He partied with them, and he
Sounds
facilitated a
like
lot of.
Diddy.
No kidding. This guy, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, and he was basically, and now he served the British in World War II. I'm sorry, he served the British in World War One, and he was a he was competent. He diffused bombs, but he also I'm pretty convinced he was facilitating information to Russia as an agent. Um, and that that's one of those moments where I see that entry in Lockhart's diary where I just almost dropped the book and I had to run downstairs and tell my wife. Um, and that's what I love. It's an Easter egg hunt. You're looking for all
Yeah,
these
yeah.
little connections, and I've made so many. One of my favorite interests is the history of education, and I have a ton of old textbooks where they are flat out just manipulating children into moving to the big city and becoming socialists and getting out of the farm
Yeah,
and
dude, I
leaving your
wonder how
family.
much was in mine when I was going to school, you know?
Now, I've shared this with other streamers, but I won't leave you out. I'll show this to you too because I think it's important. So going back to that first book I talked, or that None Dare Call It Treason book, where they mentioned George Counts. Well, he was tied up with a bunch of other socialists that were into education, and one of them was a man named Paul Hanna. And I found this book at a bookstore, and the thing that caught my eye was on the spine. It says social studies. And I
Mm.
thought, well, that's weird. That shouldn't be there for such an old book. When was this sucker made? And so, what do we got here? We got a library stamp from 1949. No, I'm sorry, that's 1948. And this entire book is written for kids, and it's all about
Ah,
leaving the country, moving to the city because
right.
everything's so much better. And they even have some predictive programming in here about machines that that make men work for them.
Ah,
Um, and in case you think I'm full of it, in the back there's a teacher's guide that explains to the teachers how to couch all of this socialist propaganda into terms that children can understand.
huh. This
And
just goes to show how long their game has been.
yeah, totally. Now, the book I've been using as kind of a table. This is part of a larger series, also written by Paul Hanna. And these are compiled. There's 10 volumes of this that I picked up. I got them cheap. Nobody knows what they have, but this is American history. This is this is what's important. Collecting all of the lies. God, this is hard to show on camera, but just take my word for it.
You're doing a
Every
good job.
volume, okay, sorry, I'm doing the best I can. So every volume, there's 10 volumes. They have subjects here on the bottom. And they're written in, I mean, they're written in magazine style with lots of infographics and photos. And what they're trying to do is explain these heavier concepts to children, but they couch them in a very in socialist language. Okay, everybody's a worker. People make resources. You know, um, governments must be trusted, and they minimize the evils of communism, and they also minimize the accomplishments of the West. And they try to make it sound like we have a lot more in common. If we just learned a little bit from each other, we might all get
Right.
along. You know, that kind of
Yeah.
crap.
Right.
Yeah. It's just like, I'd say this is like early baby steps political correctness, if that makes sense.
I think the
Yeah.
West was created to fall
Well, I mean, that's possible, but they're doing a
from day
dadgum
one.
good job. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And like I said, like their game has been they're the masters of reality. That's what I call them. Like
Yeah.
they've known this since day one, like what's gonna happen. And they'll do anything and anything
They sure
to
will.
make sure that their agenda goes into play. And I had a discussion with like my coworker last night. I said, "You think it's about the money?" I said, "No, it's about their agenda.
Yeah.
They can just
It's
print
totally about
money
their
whenever
agenda.
they want. They don't have. It's not about the money. It's not about really control. Control is part of it, but it's about what the agenda that they want to put into place. That's what everything is all about."
I know uh I'll give everybody listening on this. I'm only going to do this on your stream, and I mean
Okay.
it. Okay, I'm not lying. Okay, I'm going to give everybody a little clue. Um, so I promised myself I would try to get up to at least 3 series. I'm going to go at least as far as 3. I have enough subjects for 10 easily, but
Awesome.
once I do 3 series, every time I do a third series, I'm going to try to make a special series devoted to one subject that is so dense and rich and important. And I'm going to reveal it on your show. So when I'm done with series 3, I'm going to make a special series, same length, same everything, all devoted to MK Ultra. All
Okay.
right. And for that, I would highly if people want to get a jump on what that's about, there's just it's you can get it in any bookstore and it's easy and it I would recommend this book by Stephen Kinzer, Poisoner in Chief,
Poisoner in Chief. Nice, nice.
and it's all about Sidney Gottlieb, who led the Special Services Division at the CIA. They're the ones that came up with a whole bunch of James Bond toys, like the coin with a hidden suicide pill in it, or a
Mm,
pin that can shoot poison into a coffee drink. And this guy and his crew. I mean, the stories in this book are so incredibly extreme. You would not believe what they did to people. It is it is bananas, and it is
like,
my favorite.
seriously insidious.
Well, I mean, I'll give it to you like this. So, are you familiar with Operation Midnight Climax?
No,
Okay, well,
sounds
that was
kind of
a
hot though.
yeah. Well, it kind of. I mean, if you're into that sort of thing, you might like it. Okay, so the way MK Ultra was organized, it was organized into sub projects, and you can actually download and see a PDF of all of the sub projects. Now, some of them are classified or blacked out, but a lot of them aren't. And one of the sub projects was Operation Midnight Climax. And so, what was going on is Gottlieb was getting tons and tons of money from the CIA. Alan Dulles was writing the checks. He wanted this. He wanted this to continue. Um, Alan Dulles was highly influenced by William Wild Bill Donovan, and he's the
Okay.
one that he was told to create the Office of Strategic Services, which became the CIA. And he implemented a lot of he attempted to develop poisons and mind control stuff, and it didn't really go anywhere. But Alan Dulles picked up the ball and ran with it, and he found Sidney Gottlieb. Now, Midnight Climax was a sub project where they would rent a building and make it look like a hotel, and they would have they had this like ex mob enforcer. His last name is White. I'm trying to remember his first name, but this guy was evil. He loved torturing people. I mean, he was a hard drinker, and he'd get Johns off the street, and he'd literally like grab them and say, "Hey, you need to come see one of my ladies," and he'd pretend to be like a pimp, and he'd get these guys into these rooms with these women and drug them, get them on LSD, mescaline, every kind of combination, and there'd be a one-way mirror in which he'd record the interaction. And he found out that post-coital, these guys would spill the beans about their entire life to these strange women.
Wow.
And he loved and when people would refuse or they didn't want to partake, well, he'd go in there and say, "Look, you're already here. Nobody can save you." He'd beat on them, and if women didn't want to participate, he openly talks about how he loved slamming their breasts into a drawer. I'm like,
Holy
holy cow,
shit.
dude! That's something out of a cartoon.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my favorite subject. Out of all of this, crypto or not, para history or parapolitics, MK Ultra is my favorite. It is rich.
That's why
Like,
you're doing a special series.
oh, totally. And plus, it really
Yeah.
ties together everything. It ties together propaganda. It ties
Sure.
together um, uh, technology and science, and just the idea that you really don't have any bodily autonomy. Stuff like that.
Yeah. A lot of I would say the 90% of Truther podcast episodes have MK Ultra in there somewhere.
Yeah. I mean,
It's
you
a
can't
very
escape it.
yeah.
And
Like the
that's why
Mickey
I
Mouse
was,
Club, all that shit,
yeah,
dude.
totally. And that's why, like, you see this stuff happening, and you see how it's normalized, especially with smartphones. Um, this like I meet a lot of people on my 9 to 5 job, and what bugs me is when I'm trying to talk to my client, and they're holding a finger up to me, and they're going, hold on, hold on, hold on," because
Happens to me all the time.
yeah, they're looking at a rap music video on their smartphone, and they want to finish the video before they, do business.
Right.
And, it's like in my mind, I'm doing like 60 gigs of processing, trying to psychoanalyze them, you know, and um And then I go home and I tell my wife, and then we stay up till 3 in the morning talking about it. Yeah. Um, Things like that. I'm fascinated by trends. I'm fascinated by just how pop culture spreads, and it's obvious. Like, um, I'll, I'm sure it happens to you. You're at the grocery store and you'll see a celebrity's face on a magazine cover, and you haven't seen them in a long time. You're like, oh wow, I wonder what they're up to. Well, then maybe you're in your car and on the radio, there's like a special announcement from that same celebrity talking about a concert coming up. And you're like, oh, well, that's a coincidence. And then you get home, and then maybe a week goes by, and you find out that that celebrity has got a new charity or a new effort to promote Pfizer vaccines.
Right.
And you're like, oh, wait a minute. This is part of an advertising rollout. This is not coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're smart enough to see that.
Right.
But I don't think a lot of other people are. Okay.
Well, this is the normies and the non-normies, right?
Well, no, I know. It's not necessarily, yeah, it's not necessarily the people, it's the machinery. It's like the magician's trick, like I talked about earlier. Once you see the patterns of how this breaks down, then you start recognizing it, you start seeing it everywhere else. That's just a small
cough,
example.
cough, Taylor Swift, Super Bowl.
Exactly.
Cough, cough.
I mean,
Yeah.
she has nothing to do with football. She has nothing.
Right.
That girl. I mean, and they put her on there to normalize her appeal. And
Yep.
I don't think the last shoe is ready to drop yet for Taylor Swift. I think there's more on the horizon for her.
Sure. Did you hear what happened in Toronto with her?
If I did, I forgot.
She did like I think it was like 3 days of shows. And when she was leaving, well, first off, they named a street after her in Toronto, like Taylor Swift Way or some shit like that. And when she was leaving, they closed off the main highway so her and her escorts could go down the highway by themselves to the airport.
Well, how lovely.
Right? Like make way for the queen.
You know what that means, right? That means the Leafs are going to get bounced in the first round. Okay.
Obviously.
Which they do every year almost.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, the pop culture icons are dying. But I've heard some other rumblings. This is not my idea, but I think it's worth researching. And that is this confluence of technology, politics, and comedy happening in Austin, Texas.
Yes, one of our beloved Canadian comedians from Toronto, Ben Bankus, moved to Austin, Texas as well.
What do you think?
He loves it.
Everybody loves it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. Austin's a cool town. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's changed over the years, but there's been some rumblings that make a lot of sense to me, and that is that we don't have any pop stars that are really influential. And it's really hard for especially a music pop star to dominate multiple forms of media. But who can dominate multiple forms of media? Comedians. Okay. You can hear them, you can see them, you can read them, you can watch them. They're more useful. And this rash of woke comedians that just took over Netflix over the last 5 years is a symptom of that.
Yeah.
Because what's the adage that comedians like to use is that if I can get people laughing, then I can make them believe anything.
Right.
That's one of the reasons. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It's infiltrating everything too. Like even I'm a huge gamer, and there's a beloved series out called Dragon Age. And the latest Dragon Age game, when you first start up your game and you're creating your character, you could put in your pronouns. And I was like, oh God, really? I didn't let that deter me from playing it, because it is a great game. But some people, as soon as they see that, they're like, delete.
Well, that's actually called a nudge. That's an actual real industry term. I wasn't prepared, but do you know who Norman Lear is?
I've heard the name.
Norman Lear, he's responsible for creating all of those sitcoms from the 70s that your parents watched, like All in the Family, and the
All in the Family
Jeffersons.
was the first one I was going to mention.
Yeah, and the he broke the mold. He pretty much created that subgenre of sitcom where you have the dumb everyman who has to learn a valuable lesson at the end of every episode.
Right.
Yeah, and it's continued to this day, but um, I'll tell you, it's worse. And if I can make this work, I'll actually show it to you. And I'm not talking about what's below my shirt. So let me pull this bad boy up and see if I can make this happen. Um, the Norman Lear the Norman Lear Center is an actual um, place in California where they research how to influence people through television and film. And what's worse is actually they actually publish material. There we go. They actually publish material on how to train screenwriters and actors, how to get the information across. So they released this thing called the Media Impact Project. Everybody watching right now or listening, you need to stop what you're doing and download this document because it's not going to stay online forever. I guarantee you. This if Bernays saw this, he would scream. He would probably say, "You're revealing too much, guys."
Mm.
So some of the areas I've highlighted, I'll just quote. I'm not making this up. I'm just reading. Okay. It's vital that change makers think carefully about how to construct messages in a way that will reach and impact as many people as possible. Social and behavioral sciences points to a wide body of strategies or nudges that can be leveraged to optimize messages for impact. Funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. One way to connect people to distant issues or events is to reduce what social scientists call psychological distance. So what that means is like, say you want to normalize something about climate change. Well, what you do is you describe future flooding caused by climate change as being similar to Hurricane Katrina, but more severe and more frequent. Okay. Doesn't mean it's true. We're just trying to nudge people into believing it. Okay.
Right.
And they break this down into dollars. Okay. And this document, it's not a huge read. It's about 20 pages, but it's large font. It's like infographic style. So it's easy to read. But I'm not going to go through every section I've highlighted, but I did make a card about this. And this is being used in streaming. This is being used in pretty much every visual medium you could think of, even commercials. That's why you see so many multiracial couples in commercials now.
Tell me that this also connects with MK Ultra
Well,
in a
until
sense.
well, I guess it depends on how many prescription drugs you're on, but um, you know, it is a strange collision, where you have like psychology, marketing, and then pharmacology all kind of coalescing into one I don't know, hydra. I don't know, maybe that's similar to what you're asking.
Kind of,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, if I sat down and thought about it longer and actually prepared like a deep dive presentation, I could see how easily you connect those dots. I mean, I'm
Right. And the
yeah,
way the word that you use, nudge, is perfect because it's nudging you to accept all of these ideals, these ideologies, because it's
yeah,
so mainstream, right?
yeah, because you don't care about that when you play the game. You just want to play the
Right.
game, right? And
Yeah.
that's what everybody else does. And so when they see that, they just like, oh, this is crap. I just want to play the game. But later, I don't know, maybe a month or two, or maybe even a year later, when somebody talks about their pronouns, you don't seem as shocked because you've already experienced that in the game.
Hmm.
That's a nudge. That's the only point. That's the only point. There's no they're small nudges. They're not meant to present you with a completely different narrative about society. They're just there to nudge you about pronouns. That's it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Now multiply that times every interaction with media that you have in one day, and you're gonna have what, 50, 60 nudges?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
It's
the scary
forcing
part.
it's forcing you into a corner basically where you can't do anything about it.
And that's, like, and this is a touchy subject, but like for the longest time, we've been wrestling with when and how we're going to let our son take advantage of smartphones.
Mm.
And the we have our own method, and I like it, but at the same time, you know, it's not just predators, it's not just financial risks, it's those nudges that you're worried about.
That's the propaganda. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and being able to filter that out is the job of the parent, and I think we'll do a good job. But it's kind of like, shaking up that 8 ball and seeing what it says.
Yeah.
All signs point to yes, or I seriously doubt it. I don't.
What are your thoughts on going in a bit of a different direction here? What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on spirituality and
Hmm.
religion and stuff like that?
Well, I'm a Christian.
Okay.
It's a Christian household. I was uh I was mostly raised Baptist, but I don't I don't really put a lot of stock in individual faiths personally, only because I know what most churches in the United States do, and that
Sure.
is that they are all 501(c)(3) tax exempt
Hmm.
foundations. And
Yep.
what that does is it forces them to not talk about certain spicy subjects. And
Exactly.
the
They
effect
don't,
of
they
that,
won't even talk about books that are non-canonical.
that's right.
Yeah.
And they avoid a lot of verses in uh, in the Old and New Testament that you're not allowed to talk about. But you know what's
Mm.
funny is if you speak Hebrew, you're allowed to talk about them.
Yeah.
And that's interesting.
Right.
And now, as spiritually, I think that we're being softened. I mean, I am not a theologian, but I understand I understand a couple of things that humble me. And number one, I know that I'm reading a book, and I'm talking about the Bible. I know I'm reading a book that has been translated from at least 3 different languages into a modern form of English that was never used back then.
Right.
I understand that I'm reading a book that took place at a time where if I went back there, I could not fit in because I don't know the customs. I don't know the proper way of behavior. And so I would I would stand out. It's kind of like reading about another culture versus living it.
Yep.
And that humbles me because that means like for example, some verses, like I've always heard that when Christ turns the other cheek to the Roman soldier, it's not out of submission, because at the time, according to some researchers, that was considered a tremendous insult to turn your other cheek. Because once you were
Okay.
struck by a Roman soldier, your obligation was to get on the ground because he was your
Right.
master. But if you turn the other cheek, it's like, I'm not bowing down, and you could beat me all you want, but you're not
It's a
my
big
master.
fuck you. Yeah.
Yeah. And that right there, that
That's how I
one,
always looked at it too, though.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Christ wasn't, I mean, if he was such a nice, peace loving guy, then why did they want to kill him? Right?
He was like the biggest shit disturber there ever was.
Yes, and he beat him at their own game
Yeah.
because the Pharisees would try to argue with him legally about what he can do on the Sabbath, and is this considered work, and should you help a brother? And instead of playing their game, he made them hypocrites, and he argued the law better than they could. And I think I think that's unbelievably difficult to do in the modern age. I can't imagine how hard it was to do back then when a lot of
Right.
people were illiterate and didn't know the law.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the model that I think people miss out on when they just take whatever their typical Sunday visits at face value. Um, so I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's not that I don't. It's not that I hate churches. It's just that I hate that they've been infected by this 501(c)(3) virus and this
Yeah.
idea of, especially in the Baptist religion, and especially in the Pentecostal churches, where you get those shucking and jiving preachers that have the prosperity message.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We
And
should be able to discuss amongst churchgoers what we're discussing right now.
yeah, I would say I agree with you 100%, but it needs a good, like, scriptural sandwich to
Right.
go
Right.
go
Right.
among
Right.
it. Okay. if you can connect that with some spiritual meaning or something that has some biblical reference, then yes, absolutely, you're on the right track. Um, have you ever heard of a guy named Marjo?
No.
Marjo, what was his last name? Oh well, whatever. Marjoe. And he was one of those shucking and jiving ministers that get up there and say God wants you to have a Cadillac and you need to give me your last $10 and la da 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 da. Okay, well, he was raised by his parents to be a prodigy in a way. At like 5 and 6 years old, they put him in a white suit and they rehearsed and they practiced, and it was a
I've seen
novel
shit
thing.
like that before. Still
Yes,
to this day, you see
yes,
little black kids going around like
uh huh.
preaching just like how a pastor would say. And it's like, what?
Yep. And Marjo got sick of the act because he felt like he was manipulating people. And I'm like, yeah, you think?
You
And so
think, yeah?
what he did is much later, like in his 20s, he hired a film crew to follow him for what he called his final biblical tour. And because at this point in his life, he was wrestling with atheism. It was that bad. And
Wow.
he a very smart tactic. He decided that what he's going to do is he's going to show on camera how he manipulates entire churches as a way to say goodbye to it. Because once you're on film doing it, you can't do it again.
Right.
I'm like, dude, talk about some cojones. All
For
right.
sure.
Now there's a documentary that you can watch online. It's called Marjo, and this film crew follows him around, and he reveals all the secrets to prosperity Christianity. And it's the same stuff you see on satellite church channels today. Okay.
That's awesome. So he went
And
from like full out brainwashed, manipulated manipulator to revealing the secrets. That's a good
that's right.
thing.
That's a
Uh,
great thing.
Perhaps God used him in a huge way. You know?
You stole my next point.
Right.
That's right. Yep. And because my I love my they're not around anymore, but my dad's parents, they would not go to a church unless it had a second story. You know what I mean? I mean, they love big churches. Big. That means they're saying the right things. See, look at that church. They must be successful.
Right.
They must know what they're talking about. And they loved
This church
watching.
is gold plated on the outside.
Yeah, and it's got a gift shop, dude. You know? So they would love watching these live satellite broadcasts, and so I got very familiar with the Wolf Pack from the '80s, like Kenneth Copeland, Benny Hinn,
Oh
Robert
yeah.
Tilton, Sammy and
Dude, Kenneth Copeland
Tammy
looks like
Baker.
fucking Satan himself, man.
Yeah, he's always looked like that, and he's a
It's
local Texas
crazy.
boy. Yeah, and you know how he got to start. You know, Kenneth Copeland got to start.
No.
He was the airline pilot for Oral Roberts.
Okay.
And Oral Roberts, he's the one that made prosperity Christianity popular.
What an unfortunate name to have if you're fucking.
Dude,
You
have
know what
you
I
ever
mean?
had yeah, but hold on. Have you ever had an Oral Roberts? It's unbelievable, dude. It's okay. All right. Um but yeah, there, and in fact, I don't have the artwork available to show yet, but there is a card all about prosperity Christianity,
Okay.
and that's the series too, because that's important. People need to know about that
Nice. Yeah,
because
for
it's
sure.
actually still going on today in a younger. Okay, here we go. They've modernized it now. I mean, all these preachers, they're dying out. The people that believe them are dying out. And so we need a new generation, but we need to keep that message. And so a lot of these preachers, they've traded their suits, they've traded their Cadillacs for like tattoos, cowboy boots,
Ah,
horses,
yes.
but they're still doing the same thing. It's
Right.
still that prosperity Christianity. That $10 you got, oh man, God could do a lot with it, that sort of thing. I believe in charity. I give when I can. I donate to shows. I volunteer efforts. I help. There have been natural disasters that I've flown out to and assisted in. Um, anytime you can give or donate, I believe it needs to be direct. I don't think it has to go through a big building with a
A
guy wearing a suit.
foundation, or yeah.
Yeah.
I like to give as well, as long as I know exactly where it's going. Yeah.
And I give to people that aren't, you don't have to be a Christian. That's not what it's about.
Right.
I mean, I've got clients. Look, when excuse me, I ran out of water. No kidding. Blah, blah. But when every 2 to 4 years, when the political season kicks up here in the States, I get calls from congressmen and senators that need video work done. And so I do work for, people on both sides of the aisle, blue or red. And I don't care because they all pay green. But I'm here to
Right.
tell you, every single one of them, and I think I've worked with about six, the three local politicians, and then about six national politicians, and they're all dumb. They're all retarded. They would be nowhere without their aides, their teleprompters,
Oh,
their
I don't doubt that. Yeah.
yeah, and you're talking about people that have a public persona of somebody who's intelligent and patriotic, but
Right.
behind the scenes, they're greedy, they're they're manipulated, they're I mean, look, all I can say is, I got some non-disclosures and that's about it. But one
Yeah.
day, I mean, I don't know anything like, earth-shattering, but just being around these people, you get a real bad sense of where this country is.
For sure.
But the I get as far as the cards go, I have sent some to other people outside of like just streams and content creation. Um, I'll let you know another little secret. Ron Paul has a box of my trading cards.
Oh, no way.
I now I don't know if he knows he has them, but he has them. Okay.
You did ship it to him,
Oh
but you don't know
yes,
if he has it had it in his hands.
that's true.
Right.
Yes. Okay. Because, dude, his district, when he was a congressman, is like an hour south of where I live, um, down in Freeport. And I only know that because, I usually go fishing down there. Mm-hmm.
I have something similar. My brother, my oldest brother out of three, took a shit and put it in an envelope and sent it to Justin Trudeau. I don't know if he got it though.
Well, that's either one big envelope or I don't know. That's great.
we're going on the 2 hour mark here. I'm
Oh,
gonna
I'm
start
sorry. Yeah.
wrapping up. No, but
Yes,
that's
sir.
okay. But you were saying something that you were gonna do at the end of the show.
I sure was. So let me get this set up here. Move all this stuff out of the way so we got some room. So I want you to be a part of this too. So for anybody that's watching, we're going to play a little game here. So what I've got is let me pull these out. So I got here a stack of packs. And every pack holds 7 cards. Each box holds 36 packs, just like the good old days when you got baseball cards.
Yep.
Okay, that's another thing that made me mad. You go to the grocery store and you see these baseball cards, and they got like 10 packs, and each pack has 3 cards, and it costs $90. And I'm like, this is a joke, man. Who buys this? So
Right.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the stack, and you get to decide which pack I open.
Okay.
And the contents of that pack will be mailed to a listener in the United States. But in order to do it, you have to use a special code word. And I'm easy to find. If you really want these cards, you'll be able to find me. You can contact me personally any way you find me. And you have to use the secret code word. And the code word, let's see, what should we do here? Oh, the code word is going to be gamma ray. And
Gamma
that's like
ray. Okay.
one of my
All one
favorite.
word.
It doesn't matter. It's just one of my favorite metal bands. In fact, they made an album, and the entire album is about fighting the Illuminati. So I'm like, all
No
right,
shit.
metal music against the Illuminati. You can't beat it.
That's awesome.
So is I'm gonna move a pack of cards, and you tell me to stop.
Stop.
This one
Yep.
or this one? Okay,
Nope.
this
The one you have in your hand. Yeah.
All right, might get a little silent here, so hold on just a minute.
I can't open the goddamn pack.
Man, my hands are all sweaty. My mouth's dry. What's going on?
Here we go.
Okay, so here's what we're going to get. We're sitting talk and do this at the same time. We are going to get a black border gain of function card. We're going to get a black border Alfred Milner card. We're going to get a silver border Project Gunrunner card. We have a silver border depleted uranium card. We have a silver border Porter Goss card. We have a silver border Tavistock Institute card. That's relevant to mind control. And then we have a gold border George Dooley card, who is tied with CIA drug running and a gentleman named Barry Seal. So there you go, folks. You can have all 7 of those cards if you live in the United States, and you contact me using the secret code word Gamma Ray.
There you have it. I'm wondering if I should put that in the intro.
You would.
Or I will tell them that the code word is at the end. Yeah.
There you go. At least make them scrub to the end, right?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. That's thanks, sir. Thank you so much for letting me do this. I mean, obviously, you can tell I could talk about this kind of stuff all night.
For sure, man. For sure.
I mean, I haven't I only showed you what 3 or 4 cards from Series 2. I mean, it's blowing up, man. But we're about 10 away, and I'm looking at maybe, I don't know, end of April, maybe first part of May. We'll go into the printing process, and then after that, it's like 25, 30 days, and the boxes are ready to ship.
Sweet.
If anybody wants updates, follow me, whatever. I've got, believe me, people are going to know when these things drop and when the pre-order is ready.
Awesome. I'm going to link plunderworld.com in the show notes as well as your Instagram.
Hey, thank you.
Sweet.
This has been a lot of fun. I mean,
man. I was looking forward to this, man. It's cool because it only took you a few days. Like my March I had nobody booked in March. And then now all of a sudden you booked and I'm like, my March is filled up now.
Hey, all right.
So it's cool. You're like the first domino for March.
Well, glad I can be a part of the magic.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, man, for coming on. I look forward to what happens in the future with Plunderworld, man.
I'm one guy just trying to do what I know how to do. That's it.
Hey, that's what we're all trying to do, man.
Yep.
I love it. Okay, man. Well, you take care of yourself, and thanks a lot for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome. So I just turn it off, or is there anything?
Yeah, I'll end it, and then we're good.
Okay. All right. We have a wonderful night. Thank you.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.